quite often composers declare openly what their music is about. Like, for example, preludes of Debussy. Debussy writes a title at the end of each prelude. And, for example, when we play something like that, we know exactly what we are supposed to kind of imagine, what kind of image stands behind this prelude. But sometimes we don't have any title which would inspire us, which would give us a precise idea what this piece is about. And sometimes we can assume things. Like, for example, we can assume that Chopin was inspired in a way by poetry of Adam Mickiewicz, and that's why his first ballad sounds in such an epic. This ballad-like epic opening, which immediately sounds like a tale about old events, something ancient and something very medieval in a way. Or, for example, we might assume that the character of the E minor violin sonata of Mozart might be connected to the death of his mother, who died the same year. So that's why the character of this piece is so dramatic and restless. Yes, but we don't know that for sure. It's just an assumption. But anyway, using extra musical ideas and your imagination, of course, shapes your performance quite a lot. And very much oversimplifying, we can divide people into two major groups. So musicians who would say that, no, you just play what is written in the score. You don't have to bother to imagining stuff. This is all like nonsense. Just play what is in the score and that's it. That's good enough. Music is just pure sounds, basically. And another group of musicians say that it's very beneficial actually to use some extra musical associations, something to inspire you, and that it has a positive impact on your interpretation. And I was also formed in that kind of approach, in that kind of school, and that's why I would give you some examples, like how powerful this tool can be actually, and why I think it is very important to let things intertwine. So when you play music, you might be inspired by something else, by some other art forms, art genres, or maybe by some other just extra art experiences, your life experiences maybe. So let's have a look at some examples and see how our imagination can shape and transform our interpretation. So, for example, if I play a piece Solfeggiato by C.P. Bach, and I have actually a special video dedicated to that piece, a detailed lesson on that piece. But if I tell myself that, okay, this is a piece which has to sound in a very classical way with a, let's say, pearly touch, and for me it's a piece which should sound like a heavy rain or even a hail, then I easily can come up with something like something like that. Or, for example, I would think myself, no, this is actually a Baroque tradition piece, and in Baroque tradition people were using a lot of rubato, and C.P. Bach was a son of a great Johann Sebastian Bach, who was promoting a singing approach, singing way of playing, who was promoting legato a lot, and in general this piece sounds for me rather like a sailing through a sea. So it might be turbulent, it might be stormy, but still it's water. It should have that kind of like wavy sensation. So then we end up with just a different piece, different rendition. And of course, there, whatever option you choose, of course, there always will be someone who will come and say, no, this is too much rubato, this is too less rubato, and this is, I don't know, that or this, who will not agree with you. But the point is that your extra musical idea might actually shape your interpretation quite a lot. And sometimes with some students, it's more efficient, more effective to be more on a, let's say, logical, intellectual side. So you say them like, okay, this chord you play on a short whipping motion, focusing your fingers and immediately releasing your hands. And then you free up the hands. Voice the upper voice. Careful with the resolution. And you focus that finger here, you release that finger here, and your elbows should feel like that and stuff. So this kind of approach works best. But for other students, in my experience, it's much more effective to say something like, look, this first chord should sound like a thunder in the sky. And then we have a horrified whisper of an ancient man who sits in the cave. And thinks that those are gods who are angry with him. And appealing to the fantasy of a student sometimes is more effective because some people who have vibrant imagination and who have already enough, like, let's say, technical resources, they instantly get kind of like triggered and they come up with a much more vibrant rendition when you appeal to their fantasy. And this is something what my teachers were constantly doing when they were teaching me, and these kinds of associations were very like usual and normal in my course of education. And it's very interesting how even younger children, younger students intuitively brilliantly feel the music. Once I had a very interesting experience. I had a student who was just 8 years old, and I have invited her to my concert where I played a complete opus number 39 of Rachmaninoff's Etude Tableau, which is a very serious music. It's not really suitable for 8-year children in my experience, but nevertheless, I have invited them to this concert. But I was seriously concerned that this set of etudes might sound too overwhelming and too complicated and difficult for such a young student. So in order to turn this challenge in our favor, in our advantage, I assigned her with a task to take a notepad to a concert and create and write down a short story for each etude from this opus while she would be listening to these etudes. And some etudes from these opus, they have like unofficial names which are not published, and I didn't communicate these names to her. And number 6, for example, is unofficially called like Little Red Riding Hood and Wolf. So it's about that fairy tale, basically. And the girl, my student, she guessed actually that this piece is about hunting, like about pursuing the victim. So it was a very interesting experiment which showed me that even like small children, that they can intuitively feel the content of even complex music very well if you just evoke that, if you just assign them with such a task. So let's have a look at some example, like how our perception might shape the interpretation. And basically I can use any piece for that purpose, but I'm going to use a piece which I have also recorded recently, and I have a course on this piece, Polonaise-fantaisie by Frédéric Chopin. And if you want to know more about this piece, if you play it and want a detailed guidance through the piece, you might check the link here, where you will find a complete 2-hour course on this, 2-hour master class on this piece. And let's have a look at the beginning. From the beginning, we have 2 chords, which are forte. So I can think of these chords as of, let's say, avalanche. So then I will choose some kind of a spontaneous and very energetic way to play these chords. And then the passage in piano. So this might be one interpretation. But I might also perceive the whole introduction section, these first 20 bars of this piece, as an ocean of, let's say, collective unconscious, according to Carl Jung. And I might think that, okay, this is just my unconscious thoughts, this is my potential, and I don't know what will come up from there to my life. It might be something joyful, something painful, some good or bad experiences. This is the whole potential of possibilities which I have somewhere behind my conscious level of personality. And then I will plan differently. Same with this passage, which follows right after. I might think of it as of something beautiful and humane. So then I will use more phrasing, more legato, even some cheesy written note on top. Look how beautiful I play piano. Or I might think of it as of just solely stars, like constellation of stars, and they are looking at me. Imagine that I'm looking at the stars, but they also look at me. But at the same time, they look kind of like past me because they are stars. They don't have emotions. And then I just let this passage be. I don't try to make it emotional, don't try to make it beautiful. I just play it as it's just there. And then when we get to the next section, that ocean of unconscious disappears. We wake up and we find ourselves in a normal life. Sounds actually quite healthy to me. That's why I would rather go for a good embodied mezzo forte, and I would not dramatize this music too much. And even some local climaxes like these ones. They are just local climaxes which are challenges we can handle, actually. There is nothing what we can't handle. For example, the next episode, which features the same material in 3 different keys. And then we have the same thing in C major and E major. And I might think, how can I diversify that piano? Because I have piano, I have same melody, but I have it in 3 different keys. So for example, I might go for extra musical associations, and I might say that, okay, this A flat major sounds very warm, very homely, let's say, kind of family-like. So to me, it sounds more like a relation between mother and a child. And then just a different thing, we suddenly find ourselves in C major, which sounds much more mysterious to me. So it's something what puzzles us, but at the same time attracts us. And then when we get to E major, it sounds more like getting back to a real life. And then we have a little bit of development. So then we have 3 sections, same material, different keys, and they have kind of different emotion, different meaning. Or for example, if I really go through the score creatively and I try to understand like the whole story, the whole meaning of the piece, then I also might come up with a realization that there is a spot in this piece where the whole normal life which we had before kind of breaks, and you find yourself in a very painful spot when everything you loved just disappeared. And this is exactly that section where Frédéric Chopin uses this octatonic scale. Octatonic scale is a very weird creature, which is not really common in classical and romantic music as far as I know, but later on in 20th century, actually composers like Scriabin and, as far as I know, Bartók were using this scale more. And Chopin also uses it here, and he uses it in the most dramatic and painful spot where your life basically breaks. And this part is extremely important to me because I think that here we have this moment when something breaks in us when the melody stays lonely without the support of the left hand. And this is something like when you suddenly get a message that you have like 3 months to live or you're going to die soon or something, and you're like, how? And then you feel like the life just kind of goes away, and this lonely F sharp, it's like a candle of Philip Jankovsky. There was a movie, Nostalgie, with Jankovsky, who was holding the candle, which represented kind of an idea of fragility of life and how easy it is to lose it. But then suddenly you get an angel who comes to you and says, no, it's not the end, my friend. So the next section is like a consolation. But of course your problems don't end on that, and you still have a lot of material which is very painful in this piece, and it's much more intimate in my opinion than everything what was before, because before we had music which was kind of like opened. Or even dramatic parts of that piece beforehand in the first half, they were kind of like extrovert. But here we come to a very intimate material, to something what you would not say to anyone. And as Chopin wrote in his letters, I might be not very precise in the citation, but it was something like, I'm telling to my piano something I used to tell you. And you feel how more lonely music becomes. This all sounds much more intimate and much more painful in a way, and lonely for me personally. And this would also shape my interpretation, especially the later section when we have the same theme returns after these waves. I might say myself that, okay, this particular musical rest at the end of this bar is very important for me, because there's a general pause which prepares the entrance of the next theme, which is the most lonely and intimate in this piece. That's why I choose to play it so slowly, because I want to convey that sensation of time which stops because you're so lonely, that you're kind of frozen, you can't move until something happens what wakes you up. And then we have that very chaotic nightmares which lead you to a complete transformation in the coda. And again, if I choose, for example, to interpret this coda as like achieving style, I can easily come up with a bombastic performance, which might work, of course, very well, probably. But if I choose to think of this coda as, for example, as of transformation, inner transformation after all that painful experiences we had in this piece, and Chopin himself, he was a very sick man already, and most probably he knew that he doesn't have long. And I think that he thought about death quite often, actually, at that period of life. And this coda, for me, represents a very unique achievement of humane spirit, because this is like realization that you don't have long and that you're going to leave soon and you don't have much to live, but you decide, before I go, I will do everything possible from the bottom of my heart to make everyone around me happier. And if I have this or that idea, it might actually shape even the physiological way how I play the piece. That's why, in my opinion, fantasy is very important in music, and we have to use extra musical associations and experiment with them to see how far they can lead us on the way of interpretation. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to study with me, you can contact me following the link in the description, and I also have comprehensive courses dedicated to specific technical issues or specific pieces of the piano literature. You can also find them following the link in the description. Have fun playing piano and see you next time.